What's a lie you were told as a kid that you didn't realize wasn't true until embarrassingly later in life? That if I didn't behave myself, I would be sent to boarding school. Then I read all the Enid Blyton etc. books on girls at boarding school and desperately wanted to go. Me, can I please go to boarding school? Mom, don't be bloody ridiculous. We can't afford boarding school. My grandparents made this same threat to my dad and his 4 brothers. The eldest brother eventually misbehaved enough to be sent to boarding school as punishment. Turns out he had a great time, and from then on the rule was, if you misbehave, then we won't send you to boarding school. The Great Wall of China was built to keep the rabbits out. Too many rabbits in China. Only an Aussie would get this. That it was illegal to ever have the dome light on in the car while driving. That my senior cat, whose health was waning, was taken to a big farm for senior cats where he'd be happy and taken care of. I was probably 12. I was horrified and devastated when my dad told me this. I honestly would have taken it better if I was simply told the truth, because then I wouldn't spend years obsessing over how a farm was not a suitable place for him, and how much he must be suffering there. The truth only hit me last year when I heard someone make a "telling your kids that their pet went to live on a farm" joke. The realization was bittersweet. It's a disservice to kids. The death of a pet, though sad, is an introduction to death and grieving. Better to encounter it first with a pet than a person. My 3rd grade teacher told us that grammar rules were decided by a bunch of old people in Washington sitting around the Oval Table. My family still makes fun of me for believing it. Well, with the state of education today in the USA, she isn't entirely wrong. Every time you pick your nose, the nostril gets stretched a little bigger. If you pick your nose too many times, it'll take over your entire face. My old man is a bit strange. Reminds me of the joke. Hey, do you know why gorillas have such large nostrils? Because they have big fingers. Fish won't bite unless you stop talking. I guess my dad just wanted peace and quiet, lol. I understood it more as I got older. I don't know, man, it does seem like it helps. I was told that if you swallow gum, it stays in your stomach for 7 years. That my attendance, behavior, and grades in school would be part of my permanent record and impact my life forever. No one has ever asked me about any of that since I finished school. No employer has ever asked anything about any grade at any level of my education. I'm in my late 60s and am going to community college. My teacher, who is in his 70s, saw my fuzzy fleece jacket and started rubbing my upper arm and commenting that the fabric was really nice, and where did I get it? Then he suddenly stopped and said, "Oh, I probably shouldn't do that. They'll report me." I told him, "Yeah, it will go on your permanent record." We both threw our heads back and had a jolly laugh. When we lived in San Francisco, my dad told me that there was a fog machine. Every night, the fog machine would turn on, and you know it's on because you'd hear the loud toot toot, and soon after, the fog would roll in. That's just weather. That's what San Francisco is like. There's fog. The toots, yeah, that's the ships coming in. I was way older than I needed to be when I really thought about that. This might be too far down the line, but it's still hilarious. I was raised Jewish. We kept kosher at home. For those who don't know, Jewish people who keep kosher are not allowed to eat ham, pork of any kind. At school, I must have tried a friend's sandwich or something, but one day I tried school lunch ham and thought it was the best damn thing I'd ever had in my entire life. I knew at the time we couldn't eat pork, which was in my mind was bacon. I begged my mom for ham and she kept saying no, I wasn't allowed. I tried behaving really well, and one day she pulled me aside and said, "I found kosher ham. You can have it on Fridays if you keep this up." So for a while, I had kosher ham on Fridays at school. Eventually we all moved on and everything was fine. One day I'm with my mother-in-law, who was also raised Jewish and kept kosher. We were discussing how terrible kosher foods are, and I opened my stupid mouth and said, "As a kid I got kosher ham, and that stuff was great." And my mother-in-law looked at me like I was an absolute idiot, because I am. Obviously remembered very quickly that kosher ham is totally not a thing, and that my mother snuck ham into the house for some peace and quiet. Head lice prefer clean hair. We were taught that at school to reduce the stigma, I guess, and I was an adult before I learned they don't actually give a fuck. Sounds like a way to make kids scared of washing their hair. This issue is that there is a long-standing stigma that having lice means a person their family is dirty. Sounds like an attempt to counteract that. Maybe not embarrassing, but my uncle told me carrots cure hiccups when I was tiny. Placebo effect maybe? I believed it until last year. Never had a reason to question it. Funny stuff. I wanted to be vegetarian from a young age. To make me eat red meat, my parents told me that beef and veal weren't animals, but vegetables. Of course, I'd never seen an animal called a veal or a beef, so I believed them. I figured out beef pretty early and then refused to eat it. So from then on, whenever they wanted me to eat red meat, they tell me it was veal and that it was vegetarian. I was 16 when I discovered the truth about veal. I was horrified, upset and angry, and I still am, decades later. My mum still finds it hilarious, which just makes me more angry. Her laughing at me crying made me really hate her, and I swore I would never trust her or confide in her about anything. Don't lie to your kids. Carp latch onto your belly button and suck your guts out. Thanks, Dad. Ever seen a carp at night swimming towards you with a flashlight aimed at it? What you said is actually terrifying. It literally stole the joy of swimming from me. You couldn't get me out of the water as a kid until my dad shared that nugget. I still struggle with the fear at 36, even though I know he made it up. English in my first language, and I spoke it majority of my life, but was trying to learn Russian from my parents, their first language. Asked my mom how to say sorry in Russian. She was sorta pissed that day about something and jokingly said that sorry didn't exist in Russian, and I spread that lie for years until I looked it up. If I play with my belly button, my bum will fall off. Yes, because you could unscrew your belly button. I got told that as well by the fun auntie, and I spent ages wondering the mechanics of it all when I was a child. That you would cramp up and drown if you swam after eating. I'm okay with it. Let your food settle before you go swimming. Thing because the grown-ups take longer to eat and aren't watching the water well enough until they're done. I'd rather make the kids wait a bit instead of someone drowning. Some houses have really awesome walls that grow nuts. Walnuts specifically. Raisins are dead flies that have been plucked of their wings and legs. Guinness is made of blended cockroaches. My pet goldfish also occasionally took a vaki and came back with new spots cause he had been sunbathing. That peeing on a jellyfish sting fixes it. Not that I live anywhere near jellyfish, but I held on to that piece of information believing it to be true. Are you a cop? You have to tell me. In addition to that myth, a related concept people need to better understand is the difference between what someone is supposed to do not to and what they can literally, physically do or get away with doing not doing. I.e., just because someone isn't supposed to punch you in the face, doesn't stop them from physically doing it. Likewise, just cause a cop isn't supposed to do something doesn't at all stop them from doing it. So don't rely on, "You can't do that," as a defense. My pet gerbil, her name was Bambi, lived for 9 years. She occasionally shredded her coat and changed color, but lived to a good old age because I loved her so much. I had her from the age of 5. I was 21 before I realized I had multiple Bambis. That the Velvet divorce happened because the Czech Republic and Slovakia wanted to have their own hockey teams and win twice as many medals games as they would have if they stayed one country. I just accepted that shit as a fact and didn't give it any deeper thought for years. You only have so much breath air in your body, which one day will run out. Technically, it's true, but I now know that it's not air that's in you that you use up. If you go swimming in the ocean on your period, you'll get attacked by sharks. If you're ever bitten by a turtle, it won't let go till it thunders. I believed this for way too long. If you keep making that face, it'll get stuck like that forever. For years, I was genuinely afraid to cross my eyes or make weird expressions for too long, thinking I'd end up permanently looking like a cartoon character. That you had to be either gay or straight. Took me all of 27 years to understand that it's okay to be somewhere in the middle. Wow, it's crazy how many people went through this. My family was completely accepting of my cousin coming out as gay. But when I tried to come out, my family laughed at me and told me to pick one or the other. They tried to convince me that there's no such thing as being bi, you're just indecisive. I'm like, we aren't talking about ice cream. These are people. If you swallow a seed, it'll grow in your body. That's the best scam that ever told me. There was this all-seeing, all-knowing being who watched me constantly, just waiting to catch me sinning so I would go to hell and burn forever. I was an elementary kid with ulcers, constantly in fear of doing something wrong. Religion equals abuse. That Buddhist monks were good at fighting, as long as they center their chi. They are fucking horrible fighters, and there is no such thing as chi. Not a single one can match even a mediocre MMA fighter. They're athletic, which is an asset in a fight, not one to sneeze at either. But as a rule of thumb, if a martial art doesn't include regular sparring, it's probably crap in a real fight. Chocolate milk cows were the brown and black cows. I spent years imagining all of the vegetables that could be improved by adding sugar to the soil. Because you make regular potatoes sweet potatoes by adding sugar to the soil. What's a lie you were told as a kid? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.